Before we dive into today's episode, I want to share something with you that I genuinely believe in. If you are facing divorce and feeling overwhelmed, and I know you probably are, I want you to know that there is a better way to navigate this process. And that is why I am proud to partner with Hello Divorce, founded by my friend and CEO, Erin Levine. Hello Divorce offers a structured, step-by-step approach that helps you move forward with clarity instead of chaos. You get transparent guidance, access to legal support, mediation options, financial resources, and tools designed to reduce conflict and save both time and money. It is built to help you make smart decisions from strategy, not fear. If you want a more thoughtful and efficient path forward, visit hellodivorce.com/Susan to learn more. What if I told you that your divorce case may already be building itself without you ever saying a word? Your texts, your Venmo transactions, your Google searches, your location history, even the things you thought you deleted. We are living today in a moment where your digital life is not just part of your story, it is the evidence. And right now, this is one of the hottest, most talked about topics in divorce across social media and popular culture. But here's the problem. What people are talking about, what you're being told about it, it's often incomplete, misleading, and in some cases, dangerously wrong. So today, I'm going to break it down for you. What's real? What's hype? What can actually help you? And what could seriously hurt you if you get it wrong? Welcome to Divorce and Beyond, a podcast about navigating divorce and what comes next. I'm Susan Guthrie. I'm a divorce attorney and mediator, and for more than 3 decades, I've helped people navigate divorce with clarity, strategy, and compassion. Each episode offers practical insight into the legal, emotional, and life decisions that shape your future. So let's get started. Now, before we dive in, I want to set the stage for this conversation because this is one of those topics that's getting so much attention right now in mainstream media and across social media. It's showing up in headlines, it's all over your TikTok and Instagram, and it's being talked about in a way that makes it sound simple. But from where I sit, after decades of working in divorce and mediation, I can tell you this: it is not simple. Technology is changing divorce in very real and very powerful ways, but it is also creating confusion. And in some cases, real risk for people who are trying to navigate what is already a difficult situation. So today, I want to do 3 things for you. First, I want to walk you through what people are talking about right now that you might be hearing and questioning. Second, I want to separate what is actually true from what is not. And third, I want to give you practical guidance so you can move forward in a way that protects you. Because the goal here is not just to understand what is happening. It's to make sure you don't get caught in the fallout of getting it wrong. So, what is trending right now? Honestly, if you've spent even 5 minutes on TikTok or Instagram lately, you have seen it. Advice like check their Apple Watch, track their location, log into their accounts, download this app to catch them. And these videos, these reels, they get millions of views because they promise something incredibly powerful when you are in this very disempowering process of divorce. They promise certainty, proof, and control. And if you are going through a divorce or even thinking about it, that is incredibly tempting. But here's what I want you to understand. Access to information is not the same thing as having the right to use or even access that information. And that distinction can be where people get into serious trouble. So let me tell you a real-world story, a scenario that reflects what we're seeing more and more. A spouse who's starting to feel like, something is just not adding up financially here. And they're not going through file cabinets anymore to find proof. They start going through apps, right? They check their spouse's Venmo. They go into the credit card apps. They go into shared cloud accounts. And suddenly a pattern starts to emerge. They see transfers that don't make sense, charges that don't line up with what they've been told, and activity that waves a red flag. It raises questions. And within hours, many people will feel like, aha, I've uncovered the truth. And sometimes that information is incredibly helpful. But at other times, how they got that information in the divorce process will become the bigger issue than the information itself. And that's where cases can start to turn badly for you. So what popular media is getting right? Let's start with what is true, because there is some truth here. Digital footprints are very powerful. And so people, we find, have been documenting their lives constantly without them even realizing it. So those financial apps, messaging platforms, location services, they all do create a trail. And yes, patterns matter, right? It's often not one moment. It is the accumulation of someone's behavior over time. And we can see that through this digital tracking. And that part of the conversation is absolutely valid. But here is where things can go very wrong. This is where I want you to lean in, because this is what I am seeing behind the scenes. People can be making their decisions on bad information. And those decisions are creating consequences they'd never anticipated and don't want. Here's a few of the biggest ones. People think that if they know a password, they can log in. And factually, that may be true, but we'll talk about the problems here. They think that recording a conversation will protect them. They think that installing a tracking app is just getting clarity. And they think that deleting something makes it disappear. And none of those assumptions are universally true. In fact, in many cases, they are exactly what creates new problems. And those problems can be legal problems, credibility issues, and those can lead to strategic setbacks and, in fact, very real consequences in your divorce. And once those happen, they are very hard to undo. So this is the moment where I want you to pause and ask yourself something honestly. Are you trying to build your case, or are you trying to catch someone? Are you trying to prove that someone is the bad guy or is doing something wrong? Because those are not the same thing. Trying to build a case or trying to catch your spouse out. Those are not the same thing. And the path you choose there can completely change your outcome. And I am trying to help you be strategic in how you move through your divorce. Your emotions may be pushing you to act and to do and get that aha, caught you moment. But I want you to be strategic. So that's why I created this week's resource for you. You know, I always create a resource for you that will go along with the episode. I don't want you to just learn and take insights and information from the episode. I want you to be able to actually apply it to your life and situation. So this week's resource is called The Tech Mistakes That Can Destroy Your Divorce Case, 7 Costly Errors to Avoid, and What to Do Instead. Because I want you to have something practical. Not just what to do, but what to do instead. So in this resource, I'm going to walk you through the most common mistakes people are making right now when it comes to digital evidence, why they feel justified in the moment to do what they're doing. I want to tell you what can actually go wrong when that happens and how you can handle these situations yourself in a way that protects you. Because the truth is, most people don't realize they've made a mistake until it has already happened. And if it's happened, it will impact their case. So my goal is to help you stay ahead of that. You'll be able to find the link to the resource, as always, in the show notes, or just go to the website, divorceandbeyondpod.com, on this week's episode page. All right, so let's talk about what's really happening on social media right now, because I think there's a lot going on. And this is where I'm seeing really some of the most concerning trends, because people are no longer just going online for support or to feel less alone. They're going online for instructions. Very specific instructions, things like how to access accounts, how to track their spouse, how to record conversations, how to catch someone in a lie. And here is where I have a problem with that. The advice is being given with absolutely no regard for whether it is legal in your state, whether it is admissible in court, and whether or not this could actually damage your case if you do what this person is suggesting you do. Let me make this very, very clear for you. In many jurisdictions, recording a conversation without consent can violate the law. It's legal in some states, jurisdictions, but it is also illegal in other jurisdictions. I don't know where you live. I don't know what jurisdiction you're in. You may not even know, and you may not know what the law is in your area. But before you access someone's private account, before you record a conversation, know that you may be crossing legal lines. So, to that point, recording someone, there are laws about that. Accessing someone's account, even if you have the password from them, even if they gave it to you, you may be crossing a legal line. Access to digital accounts that are password protected have certain restrictions on when you can access those private accounts. What is a private account, right? Installing tracking software without consent can absolutely expose you to serious consequences, serious legal consequences. And there are cases where the focus of the case will shift completely because of one or all of these things. And it's not on what the other party did, everything that you're trying to prove, but it's going to now focus on what you did to try and prove it, right? Understand that shift. It's dramatic in a courtroom or in your negotiating power because it sets you back on your heels, because now you're explaining your behavior, not what they did, not the aha moment maybe you've been able to prove because of what you did. You're now explaining what you did to find out about it. And if the very least, you may be evening the negotiating playing field or the courtroom aha moment playing field, because although that you've been able to prove they did something bad, you've now done something bad too. You don't have what we call in the legal realm clean hands, right? We love clean hands. We don't like dirty hands. Okay, so you'll be explaining your behavior. Your credibility can be questioned, and that will change your case. Here's another issue that no one's talking about. Even when the information is obtained legally, so say you do any of these things and it was perfectly legal and fine, very often what you get is incomplete. You might get a text message thread without the context because the context may not be in the message thread, may not be in the text. It may have been a conversation outside of that or some other communication. You may have a transaction without an explanation of the world in which that transaction happened. And you'll often get a single moment that you will want to present as a pattern, but a single moment doesn't equal a pattern. And when you build an entire narrative around fragments, that's not a strategy, that's a risk. When you look to social media for advice on how to conduct your divorce, remember that social media is built to simplify and amplify, right? They want to make it simple, make it catchy so they get your attention so that you're going to like, you're going to share, you're going to comment. They want engagement. They want you to amplify their voice, right? And you're looking for advice. You're looking on for strategy. What should I do? So divorce is not simple, nor is it something that should be approached with shortcuts. Social media may give you an idea of something you want to do, but before you do any of it, you had better do your research, check with your lawyer, and find out what exactly you should be doing it. Let me say another thing here because I just said your lawyer. A lot of what you're talking about doing here is something that your attorney can do through legal channels, through the divorce process, through discovery. Big difference between it being done in the normal course of discovery, which is a litigation construct, than you doing it in a way that involves subterfuge. You need to be very strategic about how you apply what you're hearing, what you're being told, and your motivations for doing that. Again, go back to, are you doing this in order to build your divorce case strategy to get evidence? Or are you doing it to prove that your spouse did something wrong so you can have that aha moment? I promise you, the aha moment may feel good in the moment, in that time when it happens, but it is not something, if you can't take it into a courtroom and rely upon it as evidence, it is not something that in the end moves your strategy forward. All right, I also want to talk about AI, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is the next tech layer, and it's everywhere. And so it is absolutely impacting divorces left and right because things are accelerating really quickly, and we now have tools that can analyze hundreds or thousands of messages in seconds. It can help to categorize the financial transactions that you're looking into. It can look at patterns of behavior and put labels on them and find, where those patterns can be useful. And that can be useful. That can be helpful to your case. Don't get me wrong. When used properly, by those who know how to use them for proper uses, these tools can help you organize information, prepare questions, gain clarity, and build that divorce strategy. Good attorneys who know how to use this, divorce coaches, financial professionals, even those people who are going through divorce, even you, if you know how to use them properly, they can be helpful to you. But here's where I'm seeing a growing problem. AI is being used in ways by people who don't understand it. And so when things are coming out, they get outputs. It's creating an illusion of certainty It's giving answers. It's organizing information. The AI is presenting conclusions, and my goodness, it does so with seeming confidence. But what it cannot do is understand the full context of your situation unless it's been given the full context. It doesn't know what's missing. It doesn't know what's inaccurate in what it's being told. And it doesn't know what's legally relevant versus what is emotionally compelling. And we are starting to see people rely on AI-generated interpretations as if they are facts. They are not. They are outputs based on inputs. And so when you just give the input as if it's a fact with no understanding of what the input was, right? So you have an output, but there's no context for what was in the input. And if your input was incomplete, biased, misunderstood, not framed properly, not including all of the context, then the output will reflect that, yet the output will seem conclusory. There's a critical risk that we need to talk about as well. And this one's even bigger. This is the confidentiality risk. So everyone has heard of attorney-client privilege. They go to a mediator and the mediator tells them what happens in the mediation is confidential. All of these things are very important. They're things that we rely on so that we can speak truthfully and fully with our legal advisors, with our financial advisors, when we are in the mediation process. But here's what you need to know. When you input information into publicly available AI tools, you may be sharing confidential information, sensitive details in ways you do not fully understand, and that can seriously impact your case. We are seeing case law come out already on these topics, right? So let me say it again because I can't emphasize how important this is. When you put your confidential information or anyone's confidential information into a publicly available AI tool, when you take attorney-client privileged communications that you've received from your attorney and you input them into an AI tool, when you take confidential financial information and input it into an AI tool, you may be sharing confidential information in ways that destroy the privilege and remove the confidentiality. That can have serious impacts. And this includes financial information, personal communications, details that could be legally significant. And once you share that information, you do not necessarily control where it goes or how it is used, or if it is discoverable in the underlying legal case. So there is a case recently where it was held that a pro se party who used, I think it was ChatGPT, and they input all sorts of questions and divorce case strategy into ChatGPT in an effort to strategize their case, get information so that they could represent themselves and go into court and make arguments. The court held that those chats were discoverable. What does that mean? It means the other side could see them, read them, know what was put into that ChatGPT. So that court held, and we're going to see if other courts do the same, but that court held that that pro se party, that person who was representing themselves, anything they put into that ChatGPT that was about their divorce was discoverable. So yes, AI can be helpful, but it must be used carefully, intentionally, and with full awareness of its limitations. And if you do not know what those are, do not use it. Do not use it until you understand, right? Because again, this technology, it's not a strategy for you. It's just a tool that is supposed to support you, not ruin your case, not give away your private, confidential information or your strategy, right? If you have a strategy, the best strategy is not to take your strategy and put it on the table for the other side to know how you're strategizing. And if you put that strategy into an AI tool and then that chat is discoverable, you've just given away your strategy. I want to give you some actionable takeaways as to what you should actually do with all of this information I've just shared you, all these cautions. I want to give you the guidance that every single one of you can walk away with. First, assume that your digital life is discoverable, because in many cases, it is. Now, there's a distinction between whether your spouse goes and discovers it and whether the way that they go about discovering your digital life, whether that will be allowable in court or not. But in many instances, their attorney can, through discovery, get information about your digital life, about your digital footprint. That doesn't mean that everything will be used in court, but you should be acting with the understanding that it could be seen, it could be put on the table as a potentially embarrassing fact or something that might be used in court, and it becomes a tool in the negotiation. It becomes a lever to try to move you closer to the other side's position. So assume your digital life is discoverable. Second, do not take action based on emotion when it comes to technology, because that's where people make those biggest mistakes. They're watching TikTok and it says, put a tracking device on your spouse's car so you know if they're going over to the affair partner's home. This is where you make mistakes because you feel urgency, you want answers, you want proof, and in that moment you act. And that's where you have the problem, because if you were in a state where tracking someone is illegal, then you have done something that, again, shifts the focus away from what they did to what you did. One decision made in frustration can create consequences that will last throughout your entire case. Third, don't confuse information with leverage. Leverage is part of a negotiation. More information does not automatically strengthen your position. In fact, if it's obtained improperly, as we've said, it can weaken your position. It lessens your leverage because it becomes leverage against you. Also, if your information is incomplete, it may mislead you. And when you make mistaken assumptions based on incomplete information, that can be used as leverage against you. And if it is irrelevant legally, then it can distract you from what actually matters. A lot of times you can gather information and it's not relevant legally in your case. It's not sufficient as evidence, or it doesn't impact the outcome of your case. That is a very important distinction when you're out there trying to gather all this information and using this technology. Fourth, focus on outcomes, not exposure. The goal is not to uncover everything. People will get down into and go to the mat on trying to uncover every single detail about something. And again, sometimes the details are not going to be ultimately relevant or have a return on investment that will impact the final resolution of your case. Never forget that in a divorce action, the goal is to reach a resolution that protects your future, not gets back a piece of someone's backside because of your past, right? Retribution. You don't get retribution in a divorce case. That's a whole separate episode, but divorce law is not about divorce justice. And finally, be very selective about where you're getting your guidance. If the advice you are seeing checks any of these boxes, it encourages secrecy. It promises quick answers. It ignores legal nuance. Then that's not strategy. That's content. Social media content. Listeners, We are in a new era of divorce. There is no question. One where information is abundant, access is easier than ever, and technology can feel like power. But real power in divorce does not come from what you uncover. It comes from what you understand and how you choose to use it, how you choose to act on it, how you can use it to advance your strategy to resolve your divorce. If you take nothing else from today's episode, take this. The biggest mistake I see people make is not a lack of information. It's using information the wrong way. And in today's world, with technology, that mistake is easier to make than ever. And don't forget, that's why I created this week's resource for you, the tech mistakes that can destroy your divorce case, because I want you to be able to go deeper into the exact scenarios we talked about today, what people are doing, why it feels justified in the moment, and what can actually happen as a result. There's also clear practical guidance on what to do instead. If you are navigating divorce or even thinking about it, it's not just helpful, it's essential. You can download it at divorceandbeyondpod.com or through the link in the show notes. I also want to remind you to check in with your legal counsel or to get legal advice when you are leveraging technology in your divorce case. Bottom line is, I in a podcast can't give you the final say on whether you should be using these technologies. No one can. You should be checking the laws in your jurisdiction and getting legal advice. And the only people who can legally give you legal advice are attorneys in your jurisdiction. Take this as a caution. Take this as awareness. I always talk to you about how awareness is the beginning of everything, and use this information to help you be strategic in leveraging the technology that's available to us today in moving your divorce forward so that you can have the best beyond possible. If today's episode helped you see something more clearly, take a moment to reflect on one insight you can carry forward, one decision you can approach differently, one next step that feels more grounded. Divorce is not a failure. It is about facing reality and choosing a healthier path forward for yourself and your family. You can find show notes, trusted divorce resources, and expert guidance at divorceandbeyondpod.com. If this episode was helpful, follow the podcast and share it with someone who may need support right now. I'm Susan Guthrie. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back next time with more clarity, insight, and support on divorce and beyond.